Welcome to Crochet My Way. I want to talk about starting chains today and the components of them and how to work in them. So a starting chain is different from what we do when we're working in the round. That's when we're going round and round and growing our piece from the center out, whether it's a square or a circle or anything else. A starting chain is required when you're working in rows, and that is going backwards and forwards. And we have to start from a base. And so what we do is we create a chain for that base, and then we work our stitches into the chain. But where do you go? Where do you put your hook? So let's have a look at that. Okay, so the first thing you need to do is make a slip knot for your chain. Now that you can make a slip knot any way you do it around the house, which is sometimes just pulling a loop through like that. And it's called a slip knot obviously because it slips right back out again if you pull it through. And there are many ways to make slip knots on your hands. I've seen many people do it different ways. There are also several ways to do it using the hook directly. This is how I do it. I just twirl the hook around once and pull my yarn through, tighten that up, and that's my slip knot. And you can use that for anything, any start, whether you're starting in the round or starting a straight chain, you use the slip knot. Okay, so let me just remake this. The next thing we need to do is make a starting chain. Now your pattern will tell you how many chains to make, and it's either given to you as a multiple of something, like multiple of 6 plus 3. Now that plus 3 is what's going to signify the height of your first stitch. It could be plus 1, it could be 2 or 3, 4. It depends on the pattern. But to make a chain, the first thing we need to do is do a little yarn over and pull through the loop. And you do that over and over. So that was my first one, that's my second one, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, etc. And so you just keep going, counting as you go. And if you're doing long chains when they come into the hundreds, I would suggest you use stitch markers so that you don't lose track. So I'm just going to make a random length of chain here. There's no rhyme or reason here. I'm just using it for demonstration purposes. So there's just a few stitches there. Now, what we're going to do is turn. The first thing that happens is we turn. Now that's that plus 2 number that is sometimes given, and so if somebody says give me so many chains plus 2, those first 2 will probably signify the height of either a half double crochet or a double crochet, and that's so that you can turn, you can rotate and start to work in your chains. You need height for that. Now if it's a single chain, it's probably representing a single crochet, so you would skip the first one and do a single crochet straight into the second chain. I will make some double crochet just because they're easier to see when you're making them. Now before we start that, let's just take a look at our chain. Now the chain has a beautiful little herringbone set of top loops here. So we've got the top and bottom loop there. And then if you rotate your chain, you see another little loop at the back, right there. Now that's the third loop, also referred to as the back bump. So I'm going to teach you the 3 ways that there are to work into your chain. Now, first let's get started. The first way to do it is I'll do a yarn over for a double crochet, and I'm going to skip the first 2 chains. This is not a chain, that's just a loop. Your first chain is there, your second chain is there. So yarn over for a double crochet. We come to the third one. Now I'm going to go under this top loop here and above the 2 bottom loops. This one that winds inside the middle there is the one that ends up being that third loop at the back bump. So I'm just going to go under that very top loop like that, pull my yarn through and complete a double crochet as normal. I'll do that again. Yarn over, come to the next chain, go under that, just that top loop, just that one loop on my hook, leaving the other 2 below, and make a double crochet. Again, top loop only, and a double crochet. I'll just do one more. So, what have we got? So here we have the turning chain of 2 chains, and then a series of double crochet made into that top loop of the 3. There's 3 of them. You can see them, one there, and the one going out through the middle of the back bump. So when I did that, what I do is I leave behind 2 of the loops. I leave that one and that one. This is the back bump loop and this is the bottom loop. So that's one way to do it. Just pulling into that top loop all by itself. Now another way to do it is to use have the two of the loops above and only one below. So here we had one loop above, two below. Here we're going to have two above, the top loop and that back back loop that is also called the back bump. And I'm just going to go down through the bottom and leave the other two above. Pull my yarn through and make my double crochet. Let's do that again. Just slide. If you just slide horizontally into that chain, it will just slide under that bottom loop and leave the other two above. That's twice. Let's do it again. Just slide and pull it through. It's a bit of a downward action when you're going in through that bottom loop. It's like a down action like that. Make another one like that. So that's 4 of them. I might just do one more just so you can see the rhythm of what we're creating here. Okay, so I made my 1, 2, 3, 4 first 5 with going through only the top loop, leaving 2 below. There they are, 1 there and 1 there. Now I've made another 5 going below the top 2 loops and leaving the bottom one on its own and going down into that so that there's 2 loops above, and you can just make them out. There's one there and there's one there and there's the other one there. Okay, now look at the difference. So here this stitch actually looks shorter because the 2 loops underneath are kind of rolling forward a little bit and compressing the look of the stitch. It's just a natural thing that happens. When you come over here and I've only got the 1 loop underneath, you can see that now the stitch itself dominates. These are being a bit crowded by the loops. These ones are not, because the 2 of the loops are completely enclosed in the stitch. The stitch actually looks taller. I'll just zoom in a little bit more so you can see. See how it looks a little bit taller, but it's actually the same shape. It's just that one of these loops has rolled over to the top and is covering part of the stitch. Okay, so that's the second way to do it. Here you can see there is only 1 loop. Here you can see there are 2. Okay, so what's this other way? Let me show you. This is working into what's called the back bump, or the 3rd loop of the chain. And this is used to very good effect, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. So the way to do it is, do your yarn over, and instead of working either under the top loop or above the bottom loop, we actually rotate the chain towards us until we can see that back bump so that it's upright, and we work just into that. Just grab that back bump loop, that 3rd loop, and then make your stitch. Whoops, if you don't drop it first, make your stitch. So keep the thing rotated, go into that back bump again. Takes a little bit of practice at first, so just go slow at first till you get a feel for it, and then it will just ease up for you. Keep it rotate towards you. If you put it down and you forget which way you were rotating, I try to keep a standard. If I'm going to rotate, I always rotate exactly the same way, which is always for me towards me. So if you drop it, just give your chain a bit of a rub to make sure you find those top loops again, and then rotate it back. That's if you've put it down and forgotten what you've done. Okay, we'll do one more back bump and then we'll take a look. Now, so 5 there and 5 there. So these are my 5 back bump stitches. And you'll say, well, what's the difference? Well, you can actually see that there's a slight difference anyway. So here we had 2 loops below. Here we've only got 1 loop below. Here we have 2 loops below again, but watch this. This is quite impressive. This is the top of the work. When you work into the back bump, look what you get. You get an edge that looks exactly the same on the bottom as it does on the top. So that's the beauty of working in the back bump. And it's not often that a designer calls for that. I don't often see it. I do see it a lot being used in Tunisian crochet. And that's the attempt to stop the curling. When you're doing Tunisian crochet, your work tends to curl the bottom, the first row. And it curls here a bit too. We're not even doing Tunisian, we're doing straight crochet. And it's curling a little bit. You can just see how it kind of wants to collapse in on itself. You come to here where I've worked two loops above and one below, and it's standing much more firmer. It's not inclined to curl. Even if I play around with it, it still stays pretty straight. And then you come here, and this one is just standing as proud can be. So it's a useful little trick to know. It's also useful to know it when it's in a pattern and you're not quite sure what that means. Working into the back bump means working into the third loop that's behind the chain. These are your top loops here, front and back. This is the third loop at the back. On a stitch itself, when you're looking at stitches, we have the same 3 loops at the top of the stitch. We have the front loop there, we have the back loop, and if you rotate, that's the back loop here, you see the third loop. On a chain, it looks like a bump. There it is right there. It looks like, and is called a bump often. Here it's just another loop, and we use that for various things like back loop only stitch work. Sometimes instead of just using the back loop, we use the back and third loop for more stability. And here we've used it for aesthetics, for strength, I guess, and to prevent the work from rolling. So pay attention to that if your pattern actually asks you to put your stitches in a specific spot, and sometimes they do. Often they don't, in which case you can choose your own method. But sometimes you might be asked to work in that top loop only because maybe you're going to come around and work underneath as well, in which case you might then be able to pick up one loop on the other end as well, and you leave that bump loop completely untouched. So there's a lot of reasons why a designer might ask you to put your stitches in a particular place, but since most patterns don't specify, I thought I'd have a quick chat about it. So there you go. 2 loops above, that's 1 loop above, 2 below, 2 loops above, 1 below, and this is working in the back bump, the third loop from behind. I hope you found this a little bit useful, and hope to catch you in another video. Bye for now.